I'm up here on Tate Hill. Ever heard of it? It's off of Kaufman Road at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base between Area A and Area B. In 1924, the Dayton Air Service Committee, formed by the Patterson family, acquired the hill as part of 4,500 acres it donated to the U.S. government for the creation of Wright Field. This hill was set aside for the Wright Brothers Memorial. In 1974, the site was listed in the National Register of Historic Places due to several prehistoric Adena Indian mounds adjacent to the memorial. From here, you can see the majestic Huffman Prairie over yonder and the Great Huffman Dam, keeping back water from downtown Dayton, saving it from future floods. Our Air Force has a lot of great big data initiatives going on. Here is a whole panel of folks to talk about them.
Welcome to the AFCEA WITS Data Panel. Treating data as a critical national asset is recognized to be foundational for the future success of the Air Force and DoD. Today's panel will explore how the Air Force is addressing needs at the Air Force, MAJCOM, center, and organizational levels. We will delve into Air Force efforts in areas such as data architecture, data platform development, enterprise data management, data security, data analytics, and ANML. I'm Jackie Murray, and I am privileged to be your moderator for the panel today. I'm a principal at Hamilton, and I'm responsible for managing and executing enterprise data solutions, comprehensive training capabilities, and leading-edge software development activities for our aerospace clients. Our panel today consists of Air Force leaders that are setting the future for data analytics within the service. We will receive unique glimpses into their data transformation programs again at the Air Force, MAJCOM, and center levels. They are setting policy, architectures, building platforms, sharing data, and employing high-end data analytics techniques to drive mission effectiveness. Please join me in welcoming our panel. We have Colonel Chuck DeStefani from the Air Force Chief Data Office, Mr. Dean Blake from AFMC A4N, Mr. Mark Vanderveer from AFIMSC, and Mr. Phil Ball from AFL-CMC LG. In just a few minutes, each one of our panel members will provide an overview of their premier data activities within their respective organizations. And at the completion of their presentations, we're going to transition into a Q&A session where our panel members will be answering penetrating questions about their programs. With that, I am going to transition over to our first presenter, Colonel Chuck DeStefani.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I was just with you earlier in the data keynote. Apparently we had a technical issue and I apologize for that. I hope what you did see of our Chief Data Office overview was of value. I've been with the Chief Data Office now for 2 years on active duty. I was one of the 12 reservists that was brought on board to help stand up the office from its inception. When I'm not with the Air Force Chief Data Office, I am with DISA's Emerging Technologies Division. That is where my reserve assignment home is. And I've now been, I just crossed the 30-year mark as a communications cyber officer. I've also been a unit commander and an inspector general previously in my career. Okay, with that, I'd like to transition it over to A4 to Mr. Dean Blake.
Thank you, sir. This is Dean Blake, and also thank you for the opportunity to speak at this panel and for the opportunity to share with you some of the things that we're doing at AFMC headquarters. I'm Dean Blake. I work for Ms. Kim Brown, the portfolio manager for the Logistics IT Information Systems. In that role, I'm the program management branch chief, which has me responsible for ensuring priorities and resourcing for all of the IT applications in the portfolio. And as part of it, I actually have the benefit and the pleasure of actually leading our basing and logistics data environment, or BLADE. And what this is we are actually fielding a premier data environment, leveraging COT technologies to assist in the analytics and supporting our users across the entire logistics community, both sustainment, civil engineering, and security forces. We're working a data analytics as a service model with our partners at Hill Enterprise Data Center out at Hill Air Force Base. Looking forward to having the opportunity to chat with you today. And at that time, I'm going to transition over to Mr. Phil Ball.
Hi, my name is Phil Ball. I'm with the Lifecycle Management Center. We're in the office, and I lead an enterprise analysis branch. So a little bit about myself. I've spent my entire career here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Moved around from my first 11 years in headquarters of AFMC. Worked 6 years with the Air Force Fleet Viability Board. Then moved about 3 years or so in the program offices, and have been with the LZIA and this enterprise analysis branch for coming up on 4 years. I really had an appreciation for analysis when I was in the Air Force Fleet Viability Board, and then as I moved through the program offices, just saw the need and value for data analytics, and so was excited about the opportunity to build up an analysis capability within the logistics home office. So what we're about is looking at, we started back in 2017 to try to develop an in-house enterprise capability, trying to be proactive and develop predictive analytics. But we started very small back in 2017. We didn't really have a budget, data, software, or any expertise. So it's been quite a road to get that capability built up. Right now, we're developing foundational capability, much like Dean is doing with Blade. We are developing we've got a data platform, we've got our data collected, we've got expertise from local companies and Produco and Illumination Works and Infinite Tactics. We're developing prototype analyses to demonstrate the possibilities, what we can do with the data. And we've really been working, the nice thing about AFL-CMC is we have a connection with the program offices to use what they need, real problems that they need to solve in the data analytics area. Some of the two main focuses that we have on LCMC is first analyzing unstructured data. And that's starting with and primarily focused on contracts. We have about 3.7 million contracts that we are converting to text and analysis on. And then we're integrating disparate data sources. And where we're doing this is on the HPC, High Performance Computing Center, within the Defense Research and Engineering Network. And that was primarily out of necessity when we began. Just didn't have the resources to be able to purchase servers or move on to the cloud. So it's turned out to be a fantastic ability, leveraging DoD-funded supercomputing power, which is absolutely necessary for what we're doing. And that provides no cost to AFL-CMC as DoD has already sunk the cost into that supercomputability. And really, with what we're looking at, upwards of 300,000 compute hours converting those contracts, that's not something that would be affordable on the cloud. So, and again, within LCMC, it's very interesting. Within the Logistics Home Office, we really don't have any authority over the program offices. So we've had to really be kind of creative in how we go about our analysis. So we look forward to getting into more as we get into the questions and what we're doing there. But just thankful to be here and look forward to the follow-on discussions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Hey, thank you so much. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here. I am the Chief Innovation Officer for the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center. I retired from active duty 2.5 years ago. After 24 years, I've been a commander 3 times, at 2 joint bases, both in Iraq and Joint Base Langley Eustis. And before I came to Air Force IMSC to help it stand it up 5 years ago, I completed Group Command at RAF Lakenheath. In my capacity as Chief Innovation Officer, there's several things in our division that we oversee now, as our division has grown from 8 to 28 people, with a significant amount of contract support on top of that. We oversee strategy, the Chief Information Officer, capability development for the enterprise, also analytics, continuous process improvement, and we have a large data science contract. 5 years ago and 4 years ago, we were doing like everyone else was, trying to develop predictive algorithms on facility maintenance degradation. We're doing it in Excel and SharePoint and PowerPoint. And once we discovered intelligence tools, things really took off. And in 2019 is where everything came together in partnership with the Air Force Chief Data Office. Using these business intelligence tools, we've been able to significantly expand our portfolio. So our growth has seen it go from 1 data scientist to 8 to 22 and now 40 just in a 3-year time frame. Who do we support? We support all installation and mission support activities at the bases. So it's focused at the mission support group, and we're able to do portfolio analysis to assess risk for those portfolios, to help with POM discussions and planning discussions in the Pentagon, all the way down to requirements development at the bases when they need to program a new requirement. So in April of 2019, we loaded our very first 12 products into the CDO's Vault environment. And since then, we have seen that expand to 125 workbooks, which contain 300 sheets. And because of the unique way we can configure things, over 10,000 different ways to display that information. It's really exciting. It's a burgeoning and growing area. We have well over 50 other ongoing initiatives supporting various customers in the enterprise, and it keeps getting better. Most recently, we discovered how to set up subscription services to push documents and decision support products out to the field, commanders at the group and the squadron level, or flight chiefs and action officers. And the nice thing about that is we no longer have to provide them a point, because it's so easy to configure. We can get that information out to the folks that need it. And that's really the key, is delivering decision support to your audience at the proper time and the proper information. So we are excited to be part of the panel here today, collaborations that we have going on in this space and the terrific partners that we've been working with. Look forward to what the day brings. I'll pass it back to Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you for those intros to your background and some oversight as to what has been going on in your organizations. Colonel DeStefani, I wanted to jump back to you before we go into the actual Q&A session. I know that you were a keynote speaker just a few minutes ago, but was there else that you would like to share about the work in the Air Force Chief Data Office?
Yes, I would, and thanks for the opportunity to double tap that. We are working on the governance and the policy aspects to make the Data Council real and bring initiatives forward from the architecture and the EIM working groups up to the Data Board, to then share with the Data Council to help make decisions from a centralized governance perspective. That really needs to be in place to help both the Air and the Space Force. From a technology perspective, Mark talked about the Vault Data Platform. It is a whole lot more than a Tableau visualization service. We have the ability to do live pipelines with NiFi from a legacy data source into the cloud, through a data curation, through Trifacta, into a machine learning analytic run through Databricks or a Spark cluster, and then populated out through an API into a visualization. We have over 50 different projects occurring in NIPR and SIPR today, IL5 and IL6, and we're very excited to be continually adding to those capabilities new products and projects that I'll talk about as I answer future questions. Thank you, Jack.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Dean Blake, I know that through the AFMC A4N work a little quickly, are there any additional details that you would like to share before we go into the Q&A session?
Thanks, ma'am, for the opportunity to kind of provide some additional information, not only about the work that we're doing at A4N, but also some of the things that that we're doing collaboratively, actually working with CDO environment and Vault, as well as some of the work that we've been doing with our cloud providers up at Hanscom. So as part of our job inside A4N, we're responsible for application consolidation, which means that we look at legacy applications and determine the best application for future capabilities and tying into those future capabilities to reduce the overall footprint and sustainment, but also to improve and ultimately give our users what they deserve and what they need to get the mission accomplished. Along with that, we're also responsible for pushing applications to Cloud One. And in fact, we're happy to say that we're leading that charge with over 50% of the applications currently in Cloud One coming from our portfolio, which has given us great insight on how to leverage the cloud with our data activities, as well as working with interfaces. And we'll probably get into some of that, hopefully, in some of the questions later. But finally, with I know I talked a little bit using the Hill Enterprise Data Center. What we have set up with them is basically a virtual cloud environment that allows us to basically take data, whether that's fit for purpose from a customer brought into a drop zone or actually interfaced live through the heritage system, through our standard ingest curation process, making sure that it's fit for consumption and then provided into that consumption layer. Currently, right now, we're leveraging Tableau to do that. We have experimented over the last 6 to 7 months with the SAFs-CO Vault environment to ensure that as we work our data and they work their data, that we're hand in hand with our enterprise information models, as well as our data dictionaries. And we've actually tested using Apache NiFi as an opportunity to federate our data across multiple data environments. And then finally, I just want to highlight that we've started a minimum viable product with our PACAF users for SIPR.
Thank you. So greatly appreciate that overview that you provided of your organizations and your data activities. I have a few questions for you, and we'll start with Colonel Stephanie. As the Air Force implements the digital campaign, what are the major technologies that you think will help the most in that transformation?
Well, obviously, leveraging the cloud and the JEDI contract at the DoD level, that's going to drive a lot of the activity that we need for digital transformation. We're also doing a lot of focus in the digital campaign around documenting data standards, the different standards that are used across different functional areas, making a catalog of those standards, and start bringing those standards into the governance forum that we have for people to be able to collaborate on them and move them forward. There are new technologies that we're looking at, such as robotic process automation and the automation of machine learning activities, so that we can accelerate the delivery of machine learning models for all kinds of different analytical problem sets. And also looking across the DevSecOps spectrum and the Platform One, leveraging a Platform One continuous CI/CD pipeline for continuous ATO approach to deliver analytics capabilities as opposed to regular software applications. So we can use CI/CD pipelines to bring new tools forward through Iron Bank into the environment for broader use across air and Space Force problems. But we also can allow a collaboration environment for analysts to check in and check out R and Python code that might have been custom built for a logistics problem that could be just as useful for a transportation or a mission problem.
Great, thank you very much. There's a variety of different technologies there cutting across a variety of different domains, and watching those be brought to bear for the Air Force is very exciting. For Mr. Dean Blake, what are some of the latest trends in artificial intelligence, machine learning, high-end data analytics, and enterprise data management that you believe functionals, MAGCOMs, and centers are planning to leverage over the next 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, thank you for that question. As I look back over the last couple of years in this space, and then look forward, I believe that first of all, we have to consider that what is the purpose of artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the ability that this gives us to outpace our adversaries. Which, if you think about it, that's what we're in the business to do, is ensure that we're successful and that our enemies are not. And to do that, we have to be inside their OODA loop so that we can make those decisions. And to do that, we've got to leverage that data. As Colonel DeStefani mentioned earlier, there's a lot of technology and applications that are out there that you can leverage. And there's more and more that come online, every day that, if you just kind of stay in touch with what's going on in the commercial world. But just to highlight a few that I know that some folks are familiar with, and some of the ones that are actively working with our Blade team out of AFSC, as well out of the RSO offices, some of the activities around our condition-based maintenance activities, as well as the enhanced reliability-centered maintenance. So leveraging sensor data, as well as looking at historical legacy data, and then using that to trend out and improve upon our ability to keep aircraft flying, so that we can make determinations on when is the most appropriate time to do maintenance or replace a part before failure. All of those things, I believe, are going to lead to a much greater state of readiness for our weapon systems, and therefore for our Air Force. I would like to highlight, though, that the question was centered around technology, but I just want to foot stomp something that a lot of times it's not the technology that hinders us as much as it is the understanding of our data and the ability to get to our data. And that is one of the areas that I know that Colonel DeStefani and others on this panel are working towards, is getting that data available, and then an environment that allows you to manipulate and use that data to help make those decisions. Machine learning is not going to happen unless we have a lot of data and the ability to adjust and improve upon our algorithms. And so the first step in all of that is understanding the data and getting it into an environment that it can be used in.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, tying together the technology along with the policy and the processes and the other components that you as a logistics community have been bringing to bear is of utmost importance. The next one is for Mr. Mark Vanderveer. AFIMSC, as you has 120 dashboards that you're using worldwide to help drive the execution of your mission, and you're informing your mission decisions based on the results of your data analytics activities. How do you ensure that the quality of your data is sufficiently curated that it's trustworthy to be influencing those decisions?
Yeah, Jackie, thank you for that. That's really a great question. And we've been on this journey for 3 years, and we've learned a lot in this process. First, I want to say no one has perfect data. I think every organization, whether it's government or industry, suffers from not having perfect data. So what do you do about it? We started our journey first by saying, what data do we need to make informed decisions? And we let those decision metrics guide our path on what we were going to collect. There's a lot of authoritative databases that are out there, but you have to start there. So if you're going to make decisions, you need to frame the question and the answer before you go on that journey. Second is doing an inventory. We had to spend about a half a year to figure out where all of these sources are going to come from and how we could exploit them. Then we have measures data quality as well that we actively track for some of our systems. And when we look at our authoritative databases across the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center, we have everything from very robust and heavily curated databases that are used on a daily basis through SharePoints all the way down to spreadsheets that are collected by individual action officers. So how do you reconcile all that? For our more mature databases, we have active measurements on completeness of the data collected and data quality measures. So in some instances, for example, infrastructure, the roof or the walls do not change that much over time. So making sure they are 5 years or less old for those data points is sufficient. But then for other measures, such as financial transactions, you want those to as close as live as possible. And when we collected all this information and we discovered anomalies, there are fantastic business intelligence tools that are available that help you prep and clean the data. So no play on words, we use Tableau Prep, which oftentimes I look at and I consider it a more powerful software than the Tableau business intelligence visualizations that they produce. Because if you can't clean the data and then replicate that, you're kind of dead in the water. So Tableau Prep allows you to establish those prep flows and take those cleaning actions as you merge multiple databases and you discover anomalies. We agree within our corporate process on how we're going to clean those. And then every time we pull from those authoritative databases, the Tableau prep flow is already established, and we update our decision support documents the same time. This is absolutely essential. Understanding those business rules and the governance that's behind that before you develop that dashboard is essential. And we have to learn that for every single one of those dashboards that we provide. Other that the enterprise is doing to incentivize good data is actually incentivizing to have good data with cold hard cash. So our installation support directorate for our facility sustainment, restoration, and modernization budget for the SMS, which is the sustainment management system, data completeness, will give an extra 5% in FSRM funding to the base if they meet data targets. So that's been a fantastic way to see growth in some of those where it has been languishing in the past, and the bases are incentivized with money. And I think in many organizations across the Department of Defense, money spurs action. So we've seen positive things come out of that. And then we also do program management reviews with our enterprise managers. So for each of our key portfolios, whether it's deployment and distribution, legacy communications, facility sustainment, restoration, modernization, or airmen and family services, we have a lead 06 or GS15 that helps do a couple of things. Helps develop those decision support dashboards side by side with us, the metrics that are associated with us, with those, and then also they lead the working groups that support the panel structure in the Pentagon. So the installation panel, the PNT, first training panel, or the log panel. So it's all integrated, really, and that's several years to get to that point, to get after the data quality, to put the incentives out there, to make sure that we're reporting the victim. And now with some of our more mature dashboards, panel chair in the Pentagon can ask a question and we can deliver those results either in real time via the cloud products or within an hour or two. And we don't have people downloading data, manipulating it in spreadsheets. And as this continues to explode, there's going to be a huge return on investment back into people's time. Great question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for that detailed answer. And again, we see that unification of recognizing that you've got to build data quality in up front and as part of your architecture of that use case, but you also tied that together with some of the items we heard from others in terms of its technology and process coming together in a unified fashion to achieve that outcome. So, Mr. Philbaugh, this question is for you. You mentioned that you're working with contract data And we're used to hearing about people working with logistics data or finance data or other defense business data or even space or sensor data. We don't hear a lot about communities focusing on analyzing contract data. Can you give us some insights into how your work on analyzing contract data can help drive your mission effectiveness?
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. We have been in pursuit of the contracts data, and really what generated this was within LCMC we have a hard time getting access to data for each one of the programs. Typically, when a question comes down that's related to a program office, we would have to go out and soccer or task those program offices to provide answers. And so our SES asked if we could look into ways, data sources that we could find out and have access to data without having to do that. And so we found this resource, and it's electronic data access within the DLA. And they have a repository for all of the federal contracts. And so we went out and asked for all the Air Force contracts. And they go back to around the mid 1990s. And it's about 3.7 million contracts that we've received from DLA. And as Dean mentioned earlier, getting access to the data is a big deal. That took about a year and a half to get these 3.7 million contracts. But right now we're in the process of completing that conversion from PDF to text, about 82% through that. And also, as I mentioned earlier, with the HPC, that is critical that we have that capability, that computing power, as we've used up about 300 and some thousand hours so far in converting those contracts. So what we're doing with that, once we get those converted, as we're converting them, we're already working on processes, and we have some initial prototypes to extract forms, all the data from those forms in the contracts. So that would include the front page of the contracts with critical information in there about the vendor, the amount of money, the period of performance. And so we're extracting all of that front page information. We're also extracting all of the procedurals, the contract data requirements list. That would give us tremendous understanding and ability to analyze what we're getting from the contractors, what we've asked for from the contractors. And then it really helps us in the enterprise perspective within the center be able to better write those procedurals. And then we're also extracting tables. So that would include GFP, government furnished property. We had Global Hawk that came to us and said, we really need to know, because of the fire initiatives, where we have government equipment out in the contracts facilities and understand all of that, so that we're pulling together a comprehensive list of that GFP from all of the contracts that we have for Global Hawk. And then we're trying to automate that process to make that across all of the LCMC contracts and beyond if needed, as we're working with IMSC as well and AFSC on this effort. And then data rights assertions, being able to pull all those data rights out, it's amazing the options that we would have once we have that data. What we'd like to do is be able to develop a centralized database for all those data assertions, so that when a program is getting ready to go out and purchase a new weapon system or a modification or software or whatever, that we can go to that data repository, that centralized database for data assertions, and be able to see if the Air Force has already paid for those data rights. So excited about those two costs. And of course, we're assuming there are other tables in those contracts that will now have the capability to extract as well. We're also teaming with AFRL, who they've got an analytical cell that is working on primarily natural language processing and machine learning. And so they have developed a prototype capability to extract the CLIN information from those contracts as well. And so within LCMC, you might have a contract that has almost everything under the sun in it, from buying the aircraft, the original aircraft, buying CLS support, spares, a number of things. That information is going to be detailed in those CLINs. So being able to pull that out will help in tremendously in a number of areas. And so we're really still in the early stages of developing each one of these capabilities, but we've got the prototypes ready to go, and now we're trying to scale that up to pull those out of all those 3.7 million contracts. And obviously, we want to stay it available. So we're working, we're still in the early stages, but developing a web application which will allow the PEOs and program offices to perform text and clause searches within those contracts. And then, top level metrics or analytics or visualization for the enterprise view of those contracts. So with all of this, of course, there's going to be a lot of paid attention to detail as far as who can get access to these contracts, because we know that there's some sensitive information in there. So we'll need to make sure that we're safeguarding that. But very excited about what we have in the way of contracts and the analysis opportunities there, and it's getting a lot of attention from folks up and down the chain in the Air Force. So very excited about it.
Great, thank you. So you mentioned there safeguarding access to this data. We're going to talk about that in a little while. I think there's a question teed up for someone else. But when we get to that question, I'd encourage you to feel free to jump in and contribute your perspective, because again, with contract data, you have to control access. And so let's shift gears a little bit. We're going to go back to Colonel DeStefani, and we're going to step back and look at your efforts in context of some of the large transformational programs. One of them in particular is the Advanced Battle Management System. And that appears to be a very highly data-rich program. Can you talk for a minute about what steps are being taken by the Air Force to share common architectures and technologies between analytic solutions and solution capabilities such as ABMS?
Well, thank you. I can try. There's a lot that's going on. And I think we're trying to behave better as an organization. The Advanced Battle Management System is being driven through the Chief Architect's Office out of the SAF AQ, Mr. Preston Dunlap. Everyone knows there are over 30 different capabilities that comprise the ABMS solution, and data transfer, gateways, command dashboards, or artificial intelligence are all different pieces along that data lifecycle within ABMS. So our office has worked with the Air Force Warfighting Information Center, AFWIC, and the Joint Staff out of Langley to try to coordinate the exercises that the AF trying to push forward from a warfighting concept into that JAD2 Joint All-Domain Command and Control and Multi-Domain Operations requirements, from the warfighter into the acquisition process, so that we can feed the need for data exchanges, data latency requirements, the data packaging and standards for transmission. All of those are conversations that are being held between the Joint Staff, the DoD Council, and within the different capabilities of ABMS. The Unified Data Library at Space Command is dubbed the ABMS Data 1 platform, and has done a great job supporting the ABMS on-ramps up to now, and is very well positioned to do that near real-time data exchange. At the administrative level, at the General Wilson level, we have been working on a project called Project Brown Heron, where we have been sourcing data from a large number of information systems to report on readiness, but that is also helping us build an enterprise ontology where we can connect the knee bone to the femur, to the hip, to the spine, so that we can actually run data pipelines through the lifecycle for a series of business processes. There is a JADC2 data working group that we participate in that includes our sister services. That is also very helpful. And one thing specifically is that the Chief Data Office now has a liaison officer out at Nellis at the SHOC to assist with the planning and the execution of the JADC2 and ABMS exercises, which they just had one here in September. So we're really excited to be a part of this effort. We are trying to use our visibility across the staff to pull in the efforts that are happening with Cloud One, Discovery One, Platform One, the different functional areas, the SHOC, the joint staff, and our coalition partners to build that mission partner environment so that not only we share information across the Air Force, but also with our sister services and our international coalition partners. It's a huge, huge space, huge opportunity.
Definitely. Thank you, sir, for that broad vision for where the Air Force is going in context of DoD and some of these larger joint programs. The next question is for Dean Blake. We see the work that you're doing within the logistics community and the successes that you're achieving with cloud migrations. Over percent of the applications that have been migrated so far have come from the logistics community. Can you talk for a moment about what the typical success factors were that contributed toward this achievement? And can you identify some of the challenges that still need to be overcome as organizations try to migrate their applications to a cloud environment?
Sure. Thank you for that question, Ms. Murray. First of all, I think it's really important to talk briefly about our partners, both up at C3INN at Hanscom and as well as program offices, primarily with PEO as down at Gunner. And it's a professional job that they have done working with us as a functional community, moving our applications to the cloud, as well as working to sustain those. Specifically, I have to talk a little bit about the value, what it means to move the application to the cloud around our data space specifically. So one of the larger applications or efforts that we did move to the cloud was our LIMS EV capability, which with DISA, and now it resides in the cloud, which was a fairly large lift for us. But by doing so, it was already acquiring 35 plus data sets across all of our legacy systems. And just by moving that one application to the cloud, it has actually driven the ability for us to share and use that data across the community with other data environments or other data customers. Inside the cloud, obviously, once applications are there, the ability to share data with each other inside the cloud, technology is there, and it's fairly easy. But I think that there's probably three primary areas with moving to the cloud and struggles that we're seeing currently that I think I'd like to just briefly highlight. So the first one is the fact that we're in a situation now where we have some applications sitting in and some applications that are still on their environments. And what we've noticed in that situation is ensuring that the data connections from and the interfaces from those applications that are being moved to the cloud struggle at times to actually interface with their previous partners, whether that's because the interface is so ingrained in multiple layers of code because of how it was written early in its or because there's difficulty in getting through the various firewalls from the heritage system through your enterprise bus into the cloud. We run into several issues. So as we've gone through this process and we do the analysis against the applications, I would foot stomp that it's highly critical to understand your interfaces to the application moving to the cloud ahead of time to ensure that that data can be shared across those domains. The second thing that I would probably want to highlight the most is that although we're in the cloud and we have moved applications to the cloud, our business processes across the board for how you create interfaces have not changed. And so I believe as a community, we've got to look harder at our own processes to determine how can we accelerate that, because there should be reciprocity and things that are accepted by being in the cloud, and the security layers around that should allow us to move faster in sharing our data between applications, and not taking the large amount of time that it takes right now to get through your firewalls and your various waiver processes. And then the last thing I just like to highlight, that as we do move these applications from locations where they may have been residing for 20, 30 plus years, the workload and the skill set required to manage those applications in the cloud needs to be considered, because when they get to cloud one, there's a different skill set required, and we've been working with our program office partners on how to acquire the appropriate skills to manage those applications and the data needs once they have been transitioned to the cloud.
All right, great. Thank you very much. The next question is for Mark Vanderveer. So the AFIME community has been one of the early adopters of analytics capabilities and one of the early adopters of turning into a data-driven organization. Can you talk for a moment about what you're doing to help ensure that you're positioned to continue growing and adopting new technologies as they become available? And can you also talk about any critical successes that enabled you along the way?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, we've had fantastic leadership support at our center commander level, at our directors, and at our enterprise manager level. Without their buy-in, you really can't get anywhere. There's so much organizational bureaucracy that without leadership support, you're dead on arrival. We started our journey really looking at the maintenance community's weapon system enterprise review, and how decisions were made every quarter with all of the depots and all of the PMOs involved in that process. And it's not always about airplanes. Sometimes it might be an air operations center or a software system, but they presented their information in the same way. Sometimes you need organizational disruption to be able to get these massive gains. And when Air Force IMSC consolidated into San Antonio, for the most part, 5 years ago, it led to that driving initiative. How do we now deliver equal or better support to our installations after 1,000 personnel have been cut? So we looked at a lot of different things, but it starts and ends with leadership support. I've previously talked about our data science capability expanding. Again, over the last 3 years, we've gone from 1 to then 8 to 22 and then 40 data scientists. We've created track vehicles where we do have a baseline that provides a floor. Working with contract partners, we're able to create what we call a so other customers can buy in. That's why we're able to now partner with 45 different analytics communities and have about 50 ongoing initiatives at any time. In my role as Chief Innovation Officer, new technologies are coming down the pipe. Only further build on the existing framework and use of big data. Let's talk about computing at the edge and 5G. You hear a lot of buzz on 5G, but when you really start digging into the processing power and the real-time manipulation of data at the edge, it changes how you probably should pursue certain parts of your enterprise. We have 3 different machine learning projects going on in our innovation office now. 2 of them utilize drones, another one aerial photogrammetry. And I'm going to give you 2 examples. And it may sound trivial, but the number of use cases are limitless. One is roof inspections. At many of our bases, we have multi-million-dollar, multi-year roof inspection programs where humans or contractors climb on the roof to assess the condition, so we can program fixes or do on-the-spot repairs. What if you could do that with a drone? What if you did not have to take that drone, plug it into a computer, and then transport or transmit that information? What if you could do it over 5G at the edge? So as the drone was flying, it was putting that information directly into your authoritative database, and you have the prep flows established to go into the cloud to then automatically update your decision support documents. That's really exciting. Those kind of use cases are transformational because they are actually better, faster, and cheaper. We have another initiative to identify endangered species habitat. And there's folks with backpacks hiking through the woods to identify different types of trees or conduct inventory. And we've proven that we can do that with a drone and machine learning algorithms. But once we downloaded all that data, we had to take the hard drive, put it in the mail, and then ship it to where it was going to get processed. What if you could do that at the edge? And then the use cases are exponential. You can use them for emergency management. You might be able to identify heating or cooling losses for facilities, maybe water leaks or fuel leaks in the ground. With all these advanced types of sensors, it's really limitless on where we're able to go in the future. And that's really exciting. And Jackie, what was the last part of that question again?
Some of your critical success factors, and then the other piece was, let's see, what are the methods that you're using to ensure that you're positioned to adopt new technologies? So I think you hit that one, and you hit some of the critical success factors also. Were there any others you would like to add?
No, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's engagement, and it's a coalition of the willing or a coalition of the motivated. If you don't have willing partners, you're not going to make gains in this space. But once you prove the use of big data and decision support on how it can give you that a return on investment, our number one success for FSRM was 2 years ago when we were building predictive heat maps that showed a degradation of our entire Air Force inventory, over 55,000 buildings at our 80 major installations. And we saw a bump of $1.8 billion in FSRM because the Air Force shown the path that we were going down. And it looks a lot like national debt, right? How do you get out of this? How do you fit? And more importantly, when you data mine, there's optimizations that you find. And if the Air Force values in the lowest life cycle cost of a system, well, now we're able to show with an unemotional argument, where those trigger points are, and then you have trade space at a very high level that has tactical impacts later on. So that's those are probably good examples for some of the big nuggets on, and then where we're excited to go, because the sky's the limit as we do computing at the edge.
Yeah, that's a common theme that we're hearing across multiple government organizations now, whether it's programs like ABMS, some of the capabilities being put in or in theater environments that to both data capture and analytics delivery at the tactical edge. So we're seeing
and if you take
again,
it further, let's say you're not having flying operations that are flying on the weekend, you deploy your drone fleet and you update your data that weekend. These visions are actually now within our grasp because industry has got so much effort in these areas, and we're excited to be part of that side by side. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is for Phil Ball, and I'm going to jump back to some of the discussion that you provided earlier. You talked about 3.7 million records being brought in, and obviously that number of records, they're not all just AFL-CMC-LD or not just all AFL-CMC. They're across different sessions and agencies. Can you talk for a second about what your organization, what the Air Force is doing in collaborating with other DoD agencies on data analytics, or you put some of the barriers to be able to share data between organizations?
Yes, absolutely. So, of course, the Defense Research and Engineering Network has been paramount in that, because it's accessible through, from all the services. And so first and foremost, we've been working with the Defense Logistics Agency to get those contracts. And as you mentioned, they are definitely well beyond just LCMC. And so we've teamed up with AFSC, the Sustainment Center, looking at their contracts. One of the things they wanted to focus on was parts. All those parts contracts where we're buying replacement parts, to be able to understand when those contracts are going to be up and what parts are on those contracts, so that they can align those better with another project we're working to be able to forecast both wholesale and retail inventories are going to get down to a extremely low level. And so working within the Air Force, within the different centers, we've also been working with IMSC on those contracts, looking at performance work statements, trying to collectively pool our resources to look how we can develop standard PWSs or statements of work through looking at all those contracts. And even the Army has come to us. We've reached out to them, and they're very interested in doing this very same kind of analysis with the contracts, as well as pricing. When we started talking about what we wanted to do with looking at all of these contracts, being able to pull together an acquisition toolkit that would provide price ranges for different things that we would purchase through contracts. One of the thoughts that came up was, well, you know what? There's a database out there called CBAR, which is the Contract Business Analysis Repository, and if we could get access to that, it's a difficult system to get access to. It's very cumbersome, and it's a lot of non-structured data. So to be able to get in and develop a front-end capability that can go in and help pricers be able to understand what's out there in the way of companies, so that our pricing analysts can move through the contracting, actually expedite the contracting process significantly, because in most cases pricing is kind of the long pole in the tent. And the Navy also, we've reached out to them and they're interested as well. What's amazing is when we start doing this, as we even talk here within the panel and the folks I'm assuming that are on the other end, when you start getting into data analytics, you find so much how much you really have in common. Getting access to the data, being able to understand the data to make sense of it. So it's been a fantastic opportunity so far, and being able to leverage what they have already developed is paramount. And one thing we didn't, it's even though it's within the Air Force, is the Joint Product Support Analysis Working Group, JPSAWG, which is on, I think, what you're seeing a lot there. We haven't really talked about. That's an primarily internal forum for analysts, but we've extended that out to other services. So we meet once a month to share and leverage each other's capabilities. So hopefully that answers your question.
For that. Yes, yeah, thank you very much. So we just wanted to take a brief moment and just incredibly informative today. I've joined with you as we prepare for this panel, and we've really talked about technologies, we've talked governance, processes, coalition partnerships, stakeholders, and the needed partnerships with industry and other government agencies, that it's not just about the technologies. So again, I just want to say thank you and greatly appreciate the insights that you provided today.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.